Okay, I'm Chief Sage with the Dayton Police Department. We have been working for the last several months to try to collaborate some possibilities as a committee for improving the police services that we currently have and exploring some options that maybe we could go to. Several months back now, we had started some conversations just asking ourselves really, is there a way that we can provide the same or a better police service to both of our communities for the same or a better price? Regionalization is happening all over the country, and Maine is kind of in the tail end of that, but it's happening all over the state of Maine as well. So rather than wait until we are in a position where our communities have to make the decision, we decided to try to stay ahead of that and have these discussions early on. So that led to both towns forming a committee. That committee was tasked with researching a large amount of information over many different models of policing that's used all over the country. And the committee came up with 4 viable options of what they believed was the most viable options. And then they put those forth to the communities and to the respective boards.
Yes, so the options that we came up with the committee, first off, the main idea of this committee was how can we create a better policing product, better community service product. So we went in the mindset of how can we make this better. Both Joe and I, over the last couple of years, have experienced ups and downs in staffing. At one point, we were vacant a position for 20 months, and we had a second vacant position for 6 months. So we were trying to figure out why are we losing officers. And one of the things that we noticed was a lot of officers are going to bigger agencies for promotions, for specialties, for canines, for things that small towns are didn't have the funding for. So when we started the research, we started, first option was take no action. The second option was contract with the sheriff's office. The third option was contract to one town. And the fourth option was to create a quasi-municipality corporation. When doing the research, we knew already, if we stay the way that we are, we're going to have the same hurdles that we've been having for years. With low staffing, with not having a specialty, basically being agency that are training officers and then they're leaving to go to bigger agencies. Contracting to the sheriff's office, what we found with the quote that the sheriff sent to us was it was more money and they're cutting roughly 6 positions. So you're not only going to spend more money, you're going to lose 6 staffing that are going to be taking officers out of the community and just not filling them. Then we talked about contracting to one town. One of the things that we knew with contracting to one town is one town is going to hold the contract for the opposite town. So that means that all decisions would be made from the one community, and the other community would have to live with the choices that the first town, the contract town made. Then we found the fourth option, which is the quasi-municipality. We did a lot of research and found that the whole state of Pennsylvania went to this model. So they went, I'm going to go off the numbers off the top of my head. They had 141 police departments throughout the state. They regionalized it to, I believe it was 48 police departments. And with those police departments, I think it was over 50% of those police departments had under 10 officers. So it was a lot similar to Maine. We have a lot of small police departments. They were struggling, and the state took an initiative to set up these quasi-police departments. And what we saw was they would regionalize the state into basically take 3 departments and make them into one. And how they govern the board, so for example, for Wilton or Jay, if we did a quasi, it would be governed by Jay and Wilton, so that the towns would not lose their local identity in the police force. They would create a board that would govern the police department with members of both communities. It could be town manager, select board member, citizen. There's multiple different ways to do it. And we're talking to Pennsylvania. We got a lot of feedback from some agencies about how it's working down there, and they gave us some insights on things to do and don't if that was the option that both towns went to.
Yeah, so basically, like Chief Quasi had already said, when doing the research, looking into the possibility of what we can do and what we can make work, what we discovered was that both communities were very similar. Similar in demographics, similar in call volume, similar in command structure. There's a lot of similarities that we could really work with. So to being able to come up with some solutions that were viable and cost effective really wasn't that difficult. The difficult part was actually just combing through the vast amount of material and research that was out there to narrow it down to only 4 of the most viable options that were there. And that was done by the analysis of the pros and cons to each one. So these 4 options that were presented to the towns, certainly not the only options, but they were the options that continually came to the top as the most viable options for various reasons that we put forward to the communities.
One of the things that I would like to point out, because I know people might have a lot of questions about the Quasi, because it's not necessarily new to Maine, but it's kind of new to law enforcement. What we typically see in the state of Maine is like EMS, fire, and sometimes code enforcement. But with the Quasi, with the pamphlet or the presentation you guys got, was we added an officer, and it was still in the same price range. There's 8 total staff members, and it's still in the price range of the county with cutting 6 positions. And the structure is in there. Basically, Wilton would get a patrol zone, have an officer dedicated 24/7 to the Wilton patrol zone. Jay would get a dedicated officer to their patrol zone, and then there would be a rover supervisor. Depending on how the hours would work for the supervisor, in the graph in there, it shows that we would have an officer almost on a supervisor on almost 24/7. So, take an example of this weekend. We get a call on Sunday night for a domestic. You're going there with 1 officer because we typically have 1 officer working on a Sunday night. With this option, you're going to have a J officer coming over already because you're already working as a department, and then you're going to have a supervisor as well. So you're not going to be going to these domestics. You're not going to be going to these high-risk cases with 1 officer. You're going to have multiple officers coming. Also, we get, even today, we had a meeting with the CAC, which is a child victim advocate, and the child crimes against children are increasing. They increased significantly from last year. We're on the same pace from last year to this year. And with the Quasi, we put in there a detective position to dedicate toward the crimes against children, the DHS referrals. One of the comments made today in the meeting was that Wilton and Jay are taking a lot of their time with the DHS referrals just because we're doing so many of them right now.
So we haven't really come to the conclusion yet, but we've come to various opinions that there are certainly options that we could take as communities that I think could improve our standings, certainly for police coverage and affordability, to make us more competitive in the market for younger officers that want to come here, that want to move here, that want to build a family here, and work for one of our agencies. And that's the options that we put forth to you folks. And if you've been in one of the public meetings already, then those have been put out in detail. So tonight, I think we're just here to answer any additional questions that you might have or concerns, and if there's anything that you want to know that we haven't addressed in any of the other meetings, feel free to ask. This is an open forum, and you're not going to be embarrassed by anything.
Do you want us to identify ourselves first?
Is it the board, I guess, you're still in control of the meeting?
Yeah, if you would, just
Okay.
if you're a Wilton or J resident, whatever.
Okay. My name is Nancy Merrill, and I live in Wilton on McCrillis Corner Road. And first of all, I would like to thank you for the work and the research that you've done, because when things get difficult, that's a good direction to go in, I think. And I know that Jay and Wilton are about the same size as far as population goes. And, you know, I'm eager to see both communities get stronger and safer, but I don't want to spend more money. I think we have to be very careful about spending money. And I'm curious as to how many officers in each town are actually out on patrol daily, and how many administrative positions each town has within the police departments.
So if you go to are you talking the contract one town, or are you talking specifically the Quasi?
No, I'm talking about right now.
Oh, right now.
As separate communities. Do you want to start? for Wilton?
I'm sorry, I guess I
How many
misunderstood.
officers are patrolling on a
Patrolling?
daily basis, and how many administrative positions are there?
So we have myself, we have a lieutenant, we have a sergeant, and we have 4 patrol officers. We have 1 patrol officer in the academy, so that position needs to be filled. And we just got an officer back from military leave for 8 weeks. We typically have 1 officer on, and then we have an overlap supervisor on from Tuesday to Saturday. Depending on what's going on in the shifts, and like right now, we've had a lot of large cases, so what we have been doing is pulling our lieutenant down to do those investigations. But he's been flip-flopping from days and nights and weekends to fulfill those needs as the department needs for the investigations. I couldn't really, if you were to look at your schedule, you'd say this makes no sense whatsoever. But it's just all over the place, but typically you have 1 officer on during the day and night because we're running 24-hour shifts. So you get 1 officer all day and night. They go on call at midnight for a rest period. We are switching back in May to our 12-hour shifts because we're gonna have enough officers back to go back to the 12-hour shifts, so you'll have 24-hour coverage. Not that you don't with the 24-hour shifts, but they're resting at the PD and then they go. But it depends on the day. Sometimes it can be one patrol, 1 administrator, and at night a sergeant might come in or a lieutenant. But
So, obviously, you're the chief, and then the next person down is a lieutenant? I'm
Yeah.
not up on my
Yeah, that's
hierarchy here. Okay.
Admin
What?
So are you guys
So-
admin or is there more admin?
I'm an admin and lieutenant's admin. And then you
So do you actually go out on patrol on a regular basis as well?
I did last week. I took a patrol shift. It just depends on staffing. In December of 2024, I took 22 shifts in 1 month. That's
Okay.
unheard of for any agency. For a
And the
chief to take 22.
lieutenant is out on patrol most of
Yes.
the time?
So when we're down staff, everyone falls down 1. So when we're down an officer, the sergeant goes into the patrol rotation, and then the lieutenant goes to the sergeant's rotation, and then we're down 2. The sergeant goes into patrol, and the lieutenant goes into patrol. So
Okay.
we've been down. So we've had. So like I said, 2025 we were down a whole position for the whole year. We were down half the year, another position. We also hired some people, but you have to train them for 14 weeks before they can take a shift. So we've really been down the whole 2025, so we really haven't had a normal week in over a year. But right now, we just got the officer back from military. We still have one in the academy, so the lieutenant is now in the sergeant role as the overlap supervisor. The sergeant's in the patrol rotation.
I mean, I think as citizens in Wilton, you know, we want things to get back to normal too. I mean, we've all been thrown off since, you know, 2019, 20. But we're not going to get back to normal. I don't think we are. It's going to be a new normal. And we have to be very careful and make good choices.
Yeah, and so this August, we're going to be sending 2 people to the academy. So we're going to go down 2 positions in August for 18 weeks. So we're going to go back to the lieutenant's going to have to go into the patrol rotation. And it's, you know, when we get major crimes, we typically give it to the lieutenant, and he will, you know, fluctuate his schedule to meet the needs of the investigation, but it's not going to be able to be done if he's in the patrol rotation.
You know, I have a place on Lake Road, which actually has been my primary home for 10 years, and a building in downtown Wilton, and it's a 10-minute walk from that home to get downtown to the post office. And when I moved back up here 20 years ago from Portland, I just loved that walk. I tried to make sure that I did it every single day because it was so enjoyable. And it has not been enjoyable for a long time because of safety issues with speeding and noisy vehicles that are way too loud going through town and too fast. So, you know, I'm very concerned about safety, but thank you for that information. It was helpful. And can you tell us about Jay?
Sure. So as far as administration, I work during the days, and then I have a sergeant who also works the detective cases, and he works the child assault cases as well. And aside from him, we have one officer that's assigned regular patrol, and then we have an officer that's assigned to the school district. And that position is funded, 75% of it is funded through the school district, and then we fund the other portion of it, and then we get to utilize that officer throughout the summer months and during vacations when the officers are, or when the school's in vacation. So we typically have one patrolman on, except that my sergeant detective also will work an overlap on the weekends to try to provide some of that overnight coverage when times just get busier. A lot like Chief Quasi was saying as well, you know, it's hard to really work on some of those problem concerns that you have when you're in survival mode constantly, you know?
Yes.
We find ourselves constantly fighting with bigger agencies for the same staff. For the first time in decades, there's just not a very big pool to pull from. You know, qualified law enforcement, really anybody that wants to be a law enforcement nowadays is very hard to come by.
It's more dangerous, I think.
It is,
than it
yep.
used to be.
And there's not a lot of people that want to get into the trade anymore, right? And then you've got the added burden of going to the academy for 4 months. A lot of people don't want to do that. And then while that person's gone to the academy, that shift has to be covered. A lot of times that gets done through the chiefs, through the lieutenants, through the detectives. We're just pulling everybody that we can to try to make sure that the patrol shifts are covered. Well, if we're doing that, we're kind of we're having to set some other things that create a better culture, more services to the public. I think really get put to the back burner that we would like to dedicate more time to, but we're in a constant survival mode.
So do you feel that the two towns are fairly equal in resources right now?
They do seem to be. Yep. Yep. That certainly is what the research would suggest.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah. I just have a few questions on the quasi-municipal structure regarding the budget. Initially, I believe the budget should be figured out to be pretty close to what the combined budgets is now, a little more, a little less maybe, is that what you're thinking?
That's the
But
point.
going forward, what would that budget process look like? Like the school has a public referendum, the county has a separately elected committee, towns have annual town meetings with they can get involved in control of the budget decisions and how fast the budget grows. In the quasi municipal district, how would the quasi ensure that the taxpayers have a say in the taxation process and controlling the growth of that budget over time? I'm assuming over time that would be growing like every other budget does.
It's definitely gonna grow just because wages grow.
Right.
I mean, that's our, 80% of your budget is just wages, and wages go up every year. To answer the question regarding how do you know, you're gonna have to set up a board. In the presentation, there's a couple examples of how you can structure it, and there, one example is 2 select board members and 2 select board members and a town manager, and that will give the Wilton community some say in what the overall budget's going to be, because they can always vote no against the budget. It all depends on what the bylaws are going to be. Also, the example provided in there, what the budget is, that was really just our, best guess, trying to get something out to the public to show what it would look like. It would all probably go to the board to have to be able to approve all that.
So the board would be making the approval, would it ever go in front of the taxpayers for voting on
Yes,
those
it would
things?
always have to.
Quasi, I believe it would depend on what the bylaws are and,
It wasn't clear in what
yeah,
I've
how
heard
that
so far.
structure is organized.
Whether the voters were gonna get a say in that process.
And that-
Because sometimes the boards can make the decision within those structures.
And I don't think we
without-
have that with either communities currently.
Yeah.
Because everything goes to town meeting here, and like Maria said, you could easily put that in the bylaws that, the board approves the budget and then it goes to the town to vote, just like we do it now.
But you're accurate in the fact that it's the legal framework for the quasi municipal is there. But we've never done it for law enforcement in the city of Maine. We've done it for EMTs and fire departments and things like that. That has the most unknowns because you'd have to restructure police departments into a separate, essentially, entity that would govern. But both towns would be able to have the say and figure out what that structure is going to look like and who has what that governing authority would look like.
Yeah.
And did you run into that question at all?
Yeah. The structure in the quasi is something maybe another committee and the select board would have to go out and structure the whole agreement of what it would look like and how it would be done. Taxpayers would of course have to vote if they would take that structure. The structures on how they've been set up on the agencies that have already done it is usually set up with representatives from the towns, a select board member, local residents, people that are in a professional field such as an accountant or an attorney have been on most of these boards, and it can be made up between 6 and 10 people is how they've been set up in other states for quasis. But the whole structure, in that case, that's nothing the committee here did yet, because it would be, the residents of local towns saying, yeah, we're interested in doing this, and then you have to go out and figure out how you're going to structure that. But in the cases that we came across from the committee standpoint and what we read is it was designated and voted on through the bylaws from the residents of what they would accept.
Would that be a one-time vote to approve the committee to give them the authority to
Anytime
make
that,
those
yeah,
decisions
but
going forward?
anytime,
It wouldn't be
they
an
wanted
annual,
something.
what you're saying.
Yeah,
We'd
anytime
we'd be ceding control going forward.
that
votes.
committee, those people, yes. That's how they've been set up,
Yeah.
that we've seen so far. You never know, we could do things different in Maine, right?
And Leanne said in one of the other meetings as well, the data suggests, at least in Pennsylvania, I think was the biggest model that they've used, was that with this model, the cost did decrease.
There's 140 agencies with 10 or less. They're all rural in Pennsylvania. They weren't done in the big cities. They were out in rural Pennsylvania areas. I was able to talk to a bunch of the chiefs, and they've had them out for 3-4 years now. They took 140 agencies, merged them into 43 regionals. So there's 2 or 3 towns in all of these. Some have 2, some had 5, some had started with 2, and they've ended up with 4, as other towns said, hey, it's working good, because in 95% of the cases, they save money. All the chiefs were like, we're saving money this way. We don't have the turnover, we don't have the training, we didn't have the overtime, we didn't have 2 chiefs, we had 1 chief. So it's been working out really well in that state across the board, cost-wise, to the residents. So that it ended up, after the first couple started, they all started doing it because it was saving money across the board. That's what got it to grow up to 43 regions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question on you mentioned that cost-wise it benefited the regions, but how did it affect in terms of, like, I'm going to say consumer satisfaction? So people in the town, beyond maybe their taxes being lower, but what about, did it affect like response times, or just in general the feeling of the police and the community and that relationship?
Good. Are you referring to the quasi-municipal model?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody that the committee had spoken to there were incredibly happy with it. The response times were the same or better because they had been able to solve those staffing issues. And with solving those staffing issues, and then being able to work with some of the cultural issues that they were facing, they were being able to reach out more with specialty units like canine, more drug interdictions, more things that are safer community acts, all these different things that improve the welfare in the community. So it seems like everywhere they've done this model has been very well received.
Also, Winthrop and Monmouth are not doing this specific model, they're contracting to one town. But we talked to the chief a couple times, and they were talking about how it's worked for their communities. East Millnocket contract to one town, and there's another community on the coast that are doing it as well. I would really be surprised if towns like that, towns in the same situation we are, that are small departments struggling to keep people, aren't going to start looking into this. I've gotten calls from other agencies in District 3 looking to see how we're on the process because they're interested in doing it as well.
So, Nancy Allen, Select Board, Wilton. I contacted Chief Charles in Farmington to find out what he's got for staffing. And they've got 13 sworn officers, which includes the deputy himself, deputy chief, and the school resource officer. I count this as 16, and we're talking approximately the same population. A little larger geographically, I'll give you that. So why do we need more than they do?
That's something that the towns are going to have to decide what they really want for that command structure. What we did was we took the available resources that we had to build a model that would work, utilizing the resources that we currently have in existence. So essentially, we'll merge both budgets and both fully staffed agencies, and that's where that model's coming from. Now, if the boards want a different model, they can certainly discuss that moving forward. But that's what we were presented with, so that's what we.
Because one of the other things is, you just got more of an administrative assistant, which when we looked at this originally, we were looking at 1. And I did ask, is that person working or not? Because you were cutting it down and now we're increasing the hours. So it looks like you would need to have 2 admin, correct?
Once again, that's all the board will have to figure out. And this is just a rough draft of what we think would work best. The whole point of this is for better policing product for the community. I think going into it with less officers than we have, you're not going to get a better policing product. You're not going to have an officer station. If we have it with 13, you're not going to have designated officers to each patrol zone. Farmington, they run things a little differently, and if you wanted to keep the response time the way it is, and you're gonna need to dedicate one to each town, and then have a overlap supervisor. If you cut positions, you're not gonna have that. You might have one in each town, and you won't have that overlap supervisor, so you're gonna be the same people you are now.
So you're saying that, because I've asked about response time, you're saying that if we cut the numbers, we would have less response time than we do now, because you're not gonna have someone sitting in that community close by to come and get the help, right?
Right, if you cut positions, then you're not gonna have, you wouldn't be able to have designated officers, you wouldn't have enough people.
Do we know if this will improve response time?
We're hoping to make things, I would say, the goal is yes. The goal is to, we'll have one designated to each town, so that the response time shouldn't change, because you already have one designated to your town. The goal is now you're gonna have a supervisor that is in a supervisor role, that's a more experienced officer, that can help deal with more violent situations, because we're seeing more and more violent crimes. And now you're gonna have an officer that has more than a year on coming to back up your officer with a year on with knowledge and experience, and get a case presentable for the DA's office for prosecution to get the victim the most justice possible.
Okay, so we agreed that we've got a very young force, and probably will continue to have a young force at least for a couple of years until maybe this is instituted and it looks like people can move ahead. At some point, would you be eliminating that position because you now have experienced force and they don't need help?
I mean,
I'm just asking.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I wouldn't say, I would not agree to that.
Okay, okay.
I mean, you're gonna always have, you're gonna have new officers come in, you're gonna have people retire, you're gonna have people get out of their job because how stressful it is. We're seeing that all the time. Officer Henry, who's in the academy, is the first person sent from the criminal justice academy since me, just because we keep hiring people and they just couldn't do the job.
I'm just trying to figure out.
And there's always some redundancies that you're gonna look at, right? And these models that that the committee had put forth, they're not necessarily hard and fast numbers, okay? They're examples of what they could be, and we try to build them as accurately as we can, but there's cost-saving measures. I mean, there's redundancies of running two different departments out of two different houses and two different municipalities. You merge those, you're going to be able to have those cost-saving measures. You know, if you're able to maintain staff, because officers want to be a part of a bigger agency, and statistically, most officers want to be a part of a bigger agency. They want to be a part of an agency that's doing active drug interdiction. They want to be part of an agency that has a canine officer. They want to be a part of something that's continuing to grow and continue to develop. So you're going to see, you know, the department's going to continue to grow and provide that service that the Farmington is able to do right now, that we just cannot do separately. But if we were to combine, we would be able to. It's a very real possibility being able to do that, and that's what we're trying to achieve. We can't really quantify the exact cost-saving measure at this point because we haven't done it yet.
Okay, I'm just asking questions.
Yes,
okay?
ma'am. No, I get it.
I don't work in your field, so I need to have you.
Wait, I'm not offended in the least.
If I can add, Chief Matt Bickford, Wilton resident committee member. The numbers that you see on there were derived from the schedule. So they built the schedule based on how much coverage they need to have versus all the schools, vacation, leave, sick, all those scenarios. So that's including the overtime too. And if you wanted to eliminate overtime, that number would have to be even increased even further.
Okay, to play.
You mean eliminate a position?
Eliminate.
In the overtime.
Right.
Okay.
Or no, to eliminate the overtime,
You're gonna have to.
you have to have a higher one.
Right. And that's why we put the, sorry to finish that.
No,
That's why we put the extra position as a corporal, because we're gonna have to be sending people to the academy. I have to send 2, I have 1 in now, and you have to send 2. So we have 5 people in a year of time spent that has to go to the academy. So you've got 5 positions, so they work 42 hours a week, it's a lot of empty shifts that you're gonna be filling with overtime. And that's why we put the corporal in there. The corporal could be a FTO, so field training officer, and a corporal, they can fill in that vacant shifts when the officer is at the academy. So you're not paying, your sergeant overtime, who's making more money than your bottom patrol officer to fill that position while he's at the academy. He's working overtime at the academy because they're going 60 hours a week. So you're burning a ton of money on that when you can just hire that officer.
And to attest to that, we actually, our board agreed to let me hire an additional officer this last year to offset those overtime costs. We're able to put all the money that we're spending in overtime costs, and then we're incurring officer burnout to put into hiring an additional officer to try to help with those burnout issues. The problem is, again, which brought us all the way back to the beginning, we're a smaller agency competing with bigger agencies with a lot more services. And those are where these younger officers are going. And I think if we could fix that, combine and pool the resources that we have and become a very well organized, well structured, and well servicing machine, then I think we're going to be able to draw in all the help that we need, and we'll be able to build the services that each community really it sounds like is wanting.
And to add to that, I mean, those are the officers you want. You want the officers that want to go to the training, get the experience, want the promotion, want the K-9, want the DRE, want all these advancements in their careers. That's the officers you want, and we're losing them to other agencies because we don't have the funding or the staffing to do that.
Have you done exit interviews that specifically say, you cannot help me with my career?
Yes.
Yeah. It's too
The
small
last
and too-
3 officers that we've lost was to go to an agency that just had, it was a bigger agency with more options.
I understand that too.
I think there was a question back here. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just wondered, are Rose going to be asked to vote on something this year for this?
The goal would be is at the June primary, and that's why we'll do just a straw poll tonight to see where people are heading. 2 options, stay as you are, or go quasi, or go sheriffs. But that would be the goal. And then it will be forming another committee, and Jay, I mean, we've all got to agree, both towns have to agree to move in a specific direction. But that is the goal. That's why we're trying to get information out to people so that June 9th or whatever day the primary is, we hope to have a question on the ballot.
And then we discussed that when it was finally organized, we have another vote.
Yeah, that's just to move it forward. That doesn't bring anything to finality.
It's finalized.
Right.
I just want people to be aware of it.
That will, when we start, if both towns say, yeah, we want a quasi-agency, then that's another committee to start pulling the stuff together and fine-tuning and really structuring what it will look like. Sure.
I think answering the question is that the next step is basically what direction do the towns want to explore further? Not what are we going to vote on next as the solution. There's 4 options in front of the townsfolk. We're trying to look for directions from the townsfolk on narrowing down those options on what should we explore further, so we can then do further explorations and then have further conversations with the citizens before anything's brought before the taxpayers once again.
Should we start off by deciding which ones we don't want for today, and maybe narrowing down to 2 to choose from, just for today's discussion purposes, to see kind of what people think about that?
We can get there. Let's get through the question and answers first. Like I say, it's just going to be a show of hands. Do you want to stay as you are? I can tell you personally, after being on this committee, and we started meeting, I don't know, July or August, somewhere, it was a regular process. And I said at many of the meetings, for me, as a Wilton resident, I could see us doing a quasi, because as each town still has say in it, Whereas if we contract to Jay or Jay contracts to us, then one town, you know, it's the politics of it. People are still going to want to say, yeah, we have say in the police department. That's my feeling, and I kind of gathered from the take of conversations that it was more amenable than, say, the county taking over for us, just because they want less for more. Not good, but. So now's a chance to ask you questions of the gentlemen. They're the experts.
So obviously, the budget has to go up no matter what, because now you have to have more officers on duty, whether you hire them out or send them to train. And you're also talking about probably budgets to include training for these officers to advance, and then, you know, possibly a canine option. All of these things are not going to start out at day one, obviously, but are in the future. Are these things we're going to get to vote on? Or is that just going to be part of the set plan out of the gate?
Like Ms. Jones asked, it's going to have to go in the bylaws of how that's done.
But the bottom line is the budget has to go up.
Well, yeah, the budget's going to go up year to year. Our budget this year is going up. I'm sure your budget went up this year. Probably 90% of the town budget across the board went up. I mean, so most of the budget, or most of my budget, for the police department is pay, is workers' compensation, workers' contribution, and just to compete with neighboring towns, which are higher than us. Our budget still has to increase. It's still going to increase, and we're in a contract year, so it's going to increase a little more because being in a contract year. But your budget typically is going to always increase, but like Leanne was talking, what some of these Pennsylvania departments found is, I think it was over like a 3-year period, they found on year 3, the budget actually went down. Once they got all the officers in and they got, everyone equipped and stopped paying on training, people started staying and leaving because it's really expensive to hire someone, train them, and then leave. But that's what they found in Pennsylvania is in the 3rd year they saved money.
So would the officers in both towns have the same pay rates?
Yeah, they'll be all underneath one contract. And that's another reason why we're here, is because, correct me if I'm wrong with this, 2 years ago, we were trying to catch up on our pay. We were significantly lower than our surrounding agencies. Jay just did a raise, out of contract raise, then we did an out of contract raise, then Jay did an out of contract raise. So you have 3 out of contract raising with just because we're competing with each other for the same officers. And by doing that too, is we're not budgeting for that increase in money because it's done out of contract, not in the budget. So now you have expenditures you got to make up. And instead of competing with each other, so they're just keep upping the salary, fighting back and forth, why don't we could work together in a quasi and have one contract with one pay, well, not up there, right? But one contract covering the pay for all the officers instead of doing all these out-of-contract raises, which aren't planned for or budgeted for.
So any future changes or things that we're yet to vote on, we're going to be 2 separate towns voting on the same things, and how would that work?
That depends on the model that the towns choose. If it's the quasi-municipal model, then it would presumably be the board that makes that determination on behalf of both towns.
So the board makes decisions.
What we do with the school districts, though? I mean, we have one school district and 11 towns, and each of the towns gets a percentage of that, however they broke it out. Gets to say yay or nay. So I think it would be something like that.
And when you think about costs, yes, the costs of both budgets go up incrementally every year just because of the cost of living. But what we were finding initially when we started having these conversations a year ago now, was that we were just competing to try to find the same people. Our contracts were a little bit off, our union contracts. So Our union would negotiate for a $1.50 raise, and then as soon as we'd get it, we'd get a qualified individual, and then Chief Kai's contract would come in, and he'd go for a $1.75 raise, and now we're just kind of passing the same people back and forth. It's very difficult for us to compete with bigger agencies where we're at right now. So where you could see that cost savings in real life is through retention, and that when you don't have to continue to send officers to the academy all the time. Every time you lose somebody, you lose their uniforms, you lose the equipment that's specially fitted for them, all of their vests and everything that's specifically tailored to that officer, you lose. And then you're trying to recoup some of that in other ways. So the cost of constantly hiring and losing personnel is a very real cost to both towns that we're hoping to alleviate by adopting a different model of operation.
I live here in town too, but I came here, I don't like any of the options. I came here to be convinced which one makes the most sense. The first one, Ethan, if we don't do nothing, if we do nothing, continue the way it is, can you still function, or are you going to just be, I don't know.
We're still functioning right now. So right now we're full staff for the first time in 20 months. Well, I mean, what employer has an open position for 20 months? It's just we just aren't getting the candidates that we used to. We're surviving, like Chief Sage said, and we are, we're doing everything we can. Just because we're in a good position today, we're in a great position today. Actually, we have a phenomenal department. We've got a lot of motivated people. We've got a lot of people, officers that brought in, they might be new to law enforcement, but they have so many skills outside of law enforcement that it is detrimental to how we run things. But just because we're good today doesn't mean we're going to be good tomorrow.
Right, it's going to be fluctuating all the time. The second option, I think I can eliminate unless you convince the sheriff's department to give us a better offer. I don't know what it is. And the third one, I don't really want another town controlling our police department. That bothers me. The fourth one, the concern I have for that one is it's untried. It's a lot of, there's a lot of unknowns. I think I like the idea that it would be a bigger agency and the benefits that you both have mentioned, that you can draw better people. And I guess it sounds like the budget's going to go up no matter what, so it's not as if we're going to save money.
Yeah, and that wasn't the goal. The goal was to create a better policing product because we felt that we're both struggling and surviving, especially like for half the year. Last year we're down 2 positions. If you're at a doctor's office and you don't have 2 doctors, that would be detrimental.
But you're both having that problem ongoing.
Yeah, and to be clear, several of these models, the budget going up every year is not to do with these models.
It always does.
It's just to do with the cost of doing business. Everything has become more expensive, from the uniforms you buy, to the insurance that we're paying for, to the gas we're having to buy. Everything is just, the cost of doing business anywhere is more expensive. And Chief Quasi is right, we're in a great spot. Both towns, our agencies are thriving right now. We're doing really good. So to say, hey, are we gonna not be able to provide the service that we need in either municipality by doing nothing? No, that's not it at all. But we also know that there was a lot of towns that didn't take the opportunity to have these conversations. You've got Dixfield, you've got Mexico, just to name a couple, that had they had those conversations a lot sooner, might be in a very different position. And now they're stuck with the options that they don't necessarily want. And I think if we have the option to have these conversations now, let's explore the options now, as opposed to just kicking it down the road when we may lose personnel. And now we're in a position where we have to make decisions that we don't like.
Joe, can I get clarification? I think I heard you said that the third option is not tried and tested?
For the quasi.
Because I don't believe what I read. I believe that there are other,
But not police.
Not police in Maine,
that's correct.
but there is the quasi-municipal model is used widely throughout the rest of the country.
It's also in state statute. We're going off of what it says in state statute. And that, it's in the pamphlet, it's confusing, but it's in there, and that's kind of one of the things, I think we're here today to see what options what the townspeople want to go with so that we can start researching, maybe hire a consultant, maybe talk to attorneys, start going that route, but until we kind of get a direction of what the town wants to do, there wasn't going to be the expenditure of money to go research these more.
Just to summarize kind of what about the quasi, once, let's say we go for it, and once it's in place, after that, the board will decide any changes, or like if they want to take on a K-9 unit or other trainings and special things. So after it's in place, the board makes decisions after that. It's not a voting thing.
Presumably, but that's, again, those are some of the unknowns, right? I mean, we can only go so far with the model. The legal framework, which gives us the ability to have a quasi-municipal agency, exists in the state of Maine. But we would have to spearhead that. We're going to have to, like Chief Kai said, we're going to have to hire the consultants. We're going to have to look into the workings of building these structures up, because it has not been done to date in Maine.
I think on the town website, we have two bylaws of Pennsylvania models where it talks about kind of everything you're asking in the bylaws of how it works, in the finances and all that. We really didn't go down that avenue because we felt that might be the time when you talk to attorneys of like, hey, is this legal to do it this way? Or are we required to have votes? Like, how is it need to operate? That would be, when we want to get attorneys or consultants involved. But there is two on the Wilton NJ town website that talks about the bylaws that Pennsylvania did.
And to go a little bit further into that, and this is kind of why we had these committee discussions, was the quasi-municipal formula is also, that would be the longest to implement, because there's just so many of the unknowns that we would have to try to explore. So as far as timelines go, I don't think anybody has a really good answer for what kind of a timeline it would take from start to implementation. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's my understanding that you already assist each other. The two police departments assist each other quite a bit already. I know there's been one or two times when I have called from Wilton and I got a J police officer who did a fine job, So like you say, Sunday night is often understaffed. If you had a serious call on a Sunday night, would you not try calling Jay?
Yeah, Jay would come over, but the difference is, it's going to be your own department. It's going to be, you're going to operate the same, you're going to have all the same policies, you're going to operate, Jay might do, like right now, Jay might do something different than what we would do. But if we're one agency, we're operating on one
same page.
Same page, same policies, same culture. One of the things we talk about all the time, it's really hard for us to build a culture for our agency when people are coming and going and you have those vacancies. And what we really want to do is build a strong culture to retain people and really get into the weeds with creating a fabulous police department.
And the other question I have, and it's my own ignorance, I'm trying to learn as I go, as we all are, but the county level already fills in some as well, correct?
So where?
Like Strong is part of Franklin County.
Yep.
They don't have their own police department, do they?
No.
So if there's an incident up there, the county goes, or what?
Yes.
Yes.
County or state police.
Yeah. And yeah, the state police really isn't here. They are call sharing. They aren't really responding to calls here anymore. They stopped that in 2019.
So the county has officers staffed?
They have
daily?
18. They've added 3 positions in the last couple of years because of how busy they are. And also because the state police pulled out of the county. And they typically, what they used to do is state police would have the south and the county would have the north, and then flip-flop month to month or week to week. And then once the state police got low staffed, they pulled out. And they stopped call sharing with the county and gave it to the county. And then in the last couple of years, like, they added 3 positions in the county, and I watched on budget committee at the commissioners talking about how busy they are, and they need these positions, and they don't.
Does anyone here know the population, total population of Franklin County? I know Wilton has about
31,000.
What?
Or approximately 31,000.
31,000?
33 to 31,000.
So, but they don't patrol our towns. We do that through mutual aid agreements with each other. In fact, we just tried to get some help covering some shifts that were coming up in June, and they said, yeah, sorry, we really can't help you, but we could hire somebody at a cost to your agency if you'd like us to.
We asked, I emailed the state police and asked if you can cover 12 to 1,800 on July 7th.
Which is 12 to 6 p.m.
12, yeah, sorry. So for just a 6-hour period, you got 331 troopers. And they said they don't have staffing to help us. That's why we're here, is we got to take care of our own. When we reach out to the state police for help with shifts, we don't get it. We ask the county, at times when we've asked the county, they've said that they're going to charge us for filling those shifts. And you're already paying county taxes. And so they're going to double charge you for having them cover one shift. That's why, working with Joe is like, we can take care of each other. We just need the community support. We can create this agency if this is what the towns want, the Quasi. But we can just take care of our own. No one else is going to take care of us.
I think it's important that you mentioned that, when one of you is missing 2 people, it's certainly a lot different than as a Quasi if you were missing 2 people.
Yeah, they weren't here that. So basically, if we're a 17 or 18 person department and we're down 1 position, it's a lot easier to fill that position than if we're a 7 officer department down 1 position.
And to be fair, probably a couple of these models would be able to fix that, but where you look into like a mutual aid agreement, does everybody understand what a mutual aid agreement is? Okay, so it's an agreement that both communities come to and both law enforcement agencies come to where if there's an emergency situation or they're unable to provide the service that needs immediate assistance, we have agreed as a community, as a police department, to be able to assist when we can, as needed, to be able to render the same amount of care or to effect an arrest or what have you, that Wilton PD would. And essentially, through that mutual aid agreement, we have the same jurisdiction stepping onto that scene as they do, and Wilton does is when they come on the scene in J. So we work very well together, despite my best efforts. But we work very well together already. But a mutual aid agreement is not designed for a long-term solution, because then you've got different contracts in play, you've got different policies and procedures. Eventually, you're going to come into some kind of a liability issue, and then, well, hey, look, Jay's over in Wilton more times than Wilton's over in Jay. Who's paying for these things? And that's where it kind of gets complicated. So it's good for a temporary measure, these type of mutual aid agreements, but they're not designed for a long-term solution.
Hi, I have a question around, right now you guys have 2 police departments, obviously, and they also have physical locations. If you were to combine either through like the Quasi model or through one police department contracting what would happen with the physical location?
We would need to keep them the same just because the buildings aren't big enough. But, you know, a long-term goal would be to build a police department. And hopefully you can do that with all the grants and not put on the taxpayer. That's all things that we really haven't gotten into the weeds about. But we definitely need those facilities because they're not big enough. But, you know, a long-term solution would be if we could get, there's grants out there. We saw that small town just got like $1 million fire department. Town I've never heard of, got $1 million fire department. I'm sure we can, you know, talk to our legislation and say, hey, look, we're doing a quasi. You know, our long-term goal is to have a police department basically in the middle and go that route.
And I believe that was it. What was also in the sheriff's quote was that you would need substations anyway. So you would need to retain some portions of those buildings where even if the sheriff's department were to contract, they would be able to have to go in, do their paperwork, process their evidence and things like that. So really, regardless of this current model, you would need both facilities to a degree.
I just want to mention that there are statutes already in the state of Maine that regarding quasi-municipal entities. It's Title 38.
Yeah, so the legal, like we said, the legal framework that's already been established to look into this was it? Would you say statute 38?
Yep, it's right in your paperwork.
Yeah, thank you. It's
Or
right
not
in-
getting the page number.
And I think you put that in the link.
It was, yeah, it was in the link, yeah.
So do we have other questions? And this is really, this is a stepping off point. This is what we're going to do. Nancy?
I have one more question. I talked to a man last night who told me that Winthrop and Monmouth tried to do quasi and it failed. Do you know anything more about that?
So my understanding is that they have entered into a contract negotiation, one town with another, with the intent to move towards a quasi-municipal. And they're still in the works with that. I think the problem came into their unions, I guess, were kind of debating or questioning or whatever word you want to use, but it sounded like the unions had got involved at last time I knew. But they were already contracting one town with another town with the intent to move towards a quasi-municipal eventually.
Colin McCarthy, relatively new resident of Wilton. You mentioned about you mentioned about the culture of your department. What's the, if you're able to share it, what's the consensus for the feeling amongst your officers? Because obviously this will, if the Quasi is adopted, it will impact their working environment, etc. What's their feeling or preference for which one is chosen?
I know our officers are excited about the quasi. I know one of the things I know, especially when I was in the patrol position, everything that moves slow, we like things to move fast. We're moving fast. And I know like the slower it goes, the more questions that come up. And just explain what I do with the officers, just explain that we're still in the initial research phase. Some officers want it to move faster than others, but the consensus from the officers is as long as we do it right, they're happy with it.
Same thing with my agency. A lot of these officers, they're working out together. They're going they're eating dinner together. They're behaving like a bigger family unit anyway, just because of that close community. We're living in each other's backyards. So they've already built the relationships and the bonds. It's just, we're working for different agencies at the moment.
Anything?
Hi, my name is Nathan Helton. Got a couple questions. The first one is you said that I think the sheriff's department is offering fewer positions at roughly the same rate, making it a less efficient service. Is that fair?
Yes.
And is the sheriff's a larger law enforcement entity than either of the police departments now?
Yes, the sheriff's office has 18 total deputies, and one administrative assistant.
And it'd be even larger to add this contract, right?
Correct.
So why do you think becoming a larger entity wouldn't make the sheriff's service more efficient? Because they're offering a less efficient rate despite being a larger entity. Doesn't that kind of...
Higher rate,
right? A less efficient rate, less services per dollar.
Yes.
A higher entity offers fewer services per dollar. So
You're
why
right.
does a larger entity offer fewer services per dollar?
You're right on. That's a great question. And we don't have that answer.
Okay, well, I mean, I can offer an answer to people here. So the reason is because they're a larger entity, they're less connected from their taxpayers. They have less oversight over their budget process.
so are we ready for just a show of hands?
I have one question.
Yeah?
No, I'm always. I can't find anywhere in here where it talks, I've looked up Quasi in Pennsylvania, I cannot find anything that specifically says, and I'm looking at your references and I'm not figuring out which one it
It's
is.
starts with PA, I think.
And so Leanne will probably be the resident expert on that because she's spoken with several people down in PA, but she's saying she was having a hard time finding the references that we were using for the quasi-municipal.
It's right on both of our websites.
It's right here.
On the back page, one of the pages, it lists all of the supporting documents. You just click on that on Wilton's PD site or the JPD site. There's links right there, and it'll bring you to contracts and direct information. So if you're missing any information, go to that last page and just click on the links and you'll have a ton of information.
And is this all documentation on the town website?
It should be on your town website.
Okay, got it.
It is all on our website.
Got it,
Yep,
thank you.
I will send you the link directly.
No, it's,
I don't know.
okay, thank you. Sure, we're good? Yeah.
Any other questions? So there's four options the committee looked at. One is just stay as we are now. Thank you, gentlemen. All those in favor of just taking our chances with what we've got currently? Just a show of hands. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Contract with the sheriff's office. We have one for the sheriff's office. That was one vote, right, Nate? Okay. Contract with a town, one way or the other. 4. Look into creating a quasi-municipal agency.
Why not, gotta do something.
$17. So, and we've got the J committee, town manager, select board here.
I'm a J resident.
You're a J resident?
I need a little card over my number.
No, that's fine. I didn't realize you lived in J. I always see you at the town office, so.
She lives here more than she does.
Right. So that just gives us, you know, for me, what I saw for votes was stay as you are or have a quasi, and then it's a matter of communicating with Jay to see if they're willing to put it out to their residents also. They may not. It could just die. But as a committee, our conversations were good. Good quality time together, wasn't it?
Very good.
A lot of time.
The committee worked very well together. I did put it out to the residents, just so you know, too. And then our committee, part of the committee structure said, you know, I think it was even said, if we don't make a decision, if we decide not to do anything,
Right.
you know, as select boards, then there was nothing to do. So, you know, our committee said from expediting, solving the problems of the police department, it would be nice to be able to try to stop merging them and then work towards a quasi. It's what we came up with in the town of J. So, you know.
Anything else? I appreciate you folks coming out tonight. Just